Hi, welcome to the video. I know it's been a very long time since I've even been on here. I know everything looks entirely different. This is actually my streaming setup. You've been wondering where the heck I've been. I have been just working on my business and streaming in my free time. So that's what this looks like if you were wondering what we're doing over here. I know I normally film right back there, so we're mixing it up. I think this is just easier to get things done in. I think it's aesthetically pleasing, not to toot my own horn. So that's where I've been. I'm sorry it's been so long, but I actually have a piece of advice that I would like to go over because I got asked this question quite a lot on my Instagram. I put up a poll response where I just asked people to ask me questions about running a small business, and a lot of people asked, how do I price my items? And since this is almost my 2-year anniversary, I can say that my process for pricing has greatly changed from what it used to be to how I do things now. So I'm gonna take y'all through my new collection. These soy candles I had to completely reprice because they're a completely new product from the candles that I had been producing. So I'm gonna show y'all the spreadsheet that I put everything on, how I calculate, and sort of why I do things the way I do. And I just want to preface this by saying, for one, I'm not good at math. I don't have a degree in math or business or finance. This is just how I like to do things. This is not the only way, or maybe not even the most popular way to do things. It's just how I get things done. And within this method, there's a lot of different directions you could go, and I'll explain that as we go along. But I don't want you to take this as like the end-all be-all for pricing. This is just how I like to price things because I was asked specifically how I come up with pricing. I think that my pricing is reasonable while I'm still able to continue my business. You know, I think there's a good balance between what I make versus what the customer has to pay and what it costs to make everything. So we're gonna get into everything. If you're not following me, here are all of my social medias. They're just hanging out, ready for you to check them out. I mostly spend my time on Instagram and Twitch, but you can also find me on Twitter, TikTok, Patreon, all the good stuff. But we're gonna get straight into the video. Thank y'all for hanging with this. It's really good to be back, and let's talk about pricing. So as you can see, I've pulled up a spreadsheet, and this is how I do all of my pricing. I used to do it on paper, but I feel like everything should get on the computer at this point because I lose all of my pieces of paper. It's nice to have this to reference. I also do it in Google Drive, so if I need it, I have it on my phone as well. But as you can see, this is not the way you're supposed to use a spreadsheet. I totally understand. This is not what you use a spreadsheet for. But just having the document wasn't really working for how I like to organize things. I know it's not like optimized for the spreadsheet, but it's what I do. So the soy candles, you can see right here, you can see right here that this is what the candles are going to look like. I am hand making the jars myself out of cement. They are all natural soy. They have a crackling wooden wick, and they have a dust cover and a label and a custom stamp in the bottom. So all of these things had to be accounted for. That's why I had to redo my pricing, because I didn't used to make my own jars. I didn't used to use wooden wicks, you know, all these things that change in the process. But I'm starting off with, as you can see right here, I'm just listing every single thing that went into the candle. And you're gonna see how this plays into the pricing and a couple of things that you need to account for that you might not have thought of. So you can see my wax. This is how much wax goes into every candle. I put 8 ounces on the label for the jar, but it is technically a little bit more than 8. It's just a practice of mine to round down. I would rather the customer be surprised rather than underwhelmed. So I have 8 on the label, but it's a little bit more than 8 ounces of wax per candle. 1 wooden wick. 0.9 ounces of fragrance because I used 10% and I had a little bit over. The glitter that goes into the wax, I didn't top these candles with anything this time, but when they melt, they shimmer, so the glitter is inside of the wax instead of on top. How much cement it takes per jar to make, it's about 10 ounces. And then I use mica and environmentally friendly glitter in the jar to color it, so that is included as well. The mold and the stamp are reusable, so you can see this is just something I wanted to write down, but these are not going to go into my pricing at this stage. And then for the label, I have little gemstone labels. It's 9 labels per sheet. You can see that I just priced out per sheet, as well as the warning label on the bottom. So now you're gonna look and see, I just wrote down the price per whatever. So for example, I used 10 ounces of cement. It's $2.50 a pound for the cement. You can see that I calculated out how much that 10 ounces actually cost. I like to have both. I like to have the general metric, like it's $1.80 for every pound of wax, but since I used a little bit over half a pound of wax, it's gonna be $1. So things like that, I have both. So this row right here is just every cost per unit. So I split it up into what made the most sense. For labels, cost per sheet. For wax, cost per pound, things like that. And then below it is where I calculated per the candle itself, because I didn't use an entire sheet of labels per candle. I didn't use an entire pound of wax per candle. So I broke it down in both ways. And I get $6.50 is the cost of supplies per candle. This is quite a bit higher. Normally I'm at $4 to $5, so $6.50 is quite high. And for some of these I rounded up. $2.50, $1, you know, things aren't going to be that exact. I round up and you'll see why later. So I got $6.50 for the cost of the candle. And now what I'm doing in this section right here, all of these, I am doing the profit margin. So I use $10 because I add what I call an overhead fee. I don't know what the traditional overhead purpose is. I'm sure that there's a different name and purpose of the overhead fee. I just call it overhead, and this is just a flat fee. I usually add $2 to $3. In this case, I added $3.50 because the shipping for these products was incredibly expensive, and I did not account for shipping in the materials cost. To ship the cement, it cost $50. To ship the wax, it cost $40. And then I have website fees, so I'm on Shopify. It's a monthly fee to have a Shopify store. I need shipping labels. I need ink for my printer. I need boxes. You know, the overhead for me is all the little things that I still have to pay for, all of my expenses for running a business, but not necessarily things that go into the physical candle. So anything like that, it's just a flat fee that I add. I don't have any rhyme or reason for how I calculate this, so I'm really sorry that I can't explain it further. But by and large, I add $2 to $3. In this case, it was $3.50, and I get $10 for the total product cost. So that's materials plus overhead is $10. And now I'm going to be doing profit margin. So for profit margin, it's what you want to make in profit. So for $10, it was actually quite easy to calculate, but the basic formula is that you do the cost of the item divided by a percent of the remainder of what you want to make. And I know that sounds a little bit complicated. So let's say for 30% profit margin, if I wanted to see how much I would make at a 30% profit margin, I would divide the $10 by 70%, which is the remainder of 100%. 30, 70, 40, I divided by 60, so on and so forth. And I just wrote down all of my options. I like to give a good scale because I found after calculating all of the percentages that I felt comfortable with, I normally try to stick between 30 and 50. I think 20% is way too low for the work that you're doing, and anything above 50 or 60 is quite high. So unless you have a luxury product, a really unique, artistically demanding product, I personally just wouldn't go above 60% because I think at that point, the balance between what you earn and what the customer pays is skewed more to the burden on the customer. So I did all the calculations and I found that 20 was a little bit too low and 25 was a bit too high, so I went with 24, which if I did the math, it'd probably be like 57 or 58% profit margin, and that's what I'm making on this collection. And I decided to go towards the higher end on the profit margin because I'm making the jars by myself, all handmade. The wooden wicks, all of this stuff takes a little bit more finesse and technical knowledge than what I was making in the past. So I decided that I was worth a little bit more. I wanted the profit margin to be a little bit higher. These candles are entirely unique and they take a lot of time. So that is how I do my pricing, and I take that stuff into consideration because I don't have any sort of calculation where I pay myself per candle, per hour, per process, anything like that. I just do the profit margin. I know a lot of people like to just triple their materials cost. A lot of people like to calculate a salary for themselves. You know, there's all kinds of ways to do it. I do it like this because I just find it's nice to know how much a product costs and how much I'm making on it. This is also really helpful if you're going to be wholesaling. You're going to need to know the materials cost when you do a wholesaling sheet for someone. And it's just a good thing to get in the habit of. Let's say I did the materials cost for these candles and it was like $12 to make them. I would probably want to change my process somewhere along the way because $12 to make a single product is incredibly high, unless you're making luxury stuff. I'm not in the luxury space. So again, this is all going to be incredibly personal. This is all going to be up to your preference, to your standards, to your business model. But this is just how I do it. As you can see, I would just continue this. I have other sheets. This is for the body mists. So I just like to keep everything organized. This is also good to refer back to. If I need to price out a different size candle, I can be like, it's $1.80 per pound of wax because I wrote it down here and I know that. This is a good format to get in the habit of for everything. And And that's the long short, more or less. Although pricing can seem a little bit daunting, there's not too much to it. You just need to make sure, for one, that you're covering the cost of your materials and that you're paying yourself for all kinds of things that you need to account for: taxes, website fees, your time managing social media, customer service. I think that you should definitely make sure that you're not just making back what you spent to make your products, but that you're making enough income to sustain your business, to keep buying things, keep growing, and that you can live. Like, especially if this is your full-time thing or you're trying to get full-time, you need to account for your own time and your own energy and your own skill. So that's why pricing is so important. In the past, I would just guess. I would look at a candle and be like, I'd pay $4 for that. I'd pay $20 for that. And I would just price it in that way. And I have no way of knowing if I was making a loss, if I was making a profit. You really have to keep on track of these things sooner rather than later, even if it's a side hustle, even if it's just for fun. You don't want your hobby to put you in the red, and you want to know how to grow from these stats. So I can look and say, hey, I've been making 55% profit. I can invest in a new product. I can make more of this. I can do that. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't written all of this out and figured it out. It's just a good practice. Like, if you would expect a business to run a certain way, you should operate in that way. I think take yourself seriously from day one, even if you don't plan to do things full time or anything like that. If you're making a product, if you're advertising your brand on social media, if you're taking money from other people in exchange for a product, I think that you really need to legitimize before things get messy. So that is not to scare anyone off. This honestly is not as hard as it seems, but that is my process for pricing products. If you have a different way of doing things, I'd love to hear about it. I will not be changing my process because this took a long time to get the hang of, but I like to talk about other people's processes. I love to hear how other people are doing things. So feel free to let me know in the comments or on Instagram or something. And I will be getting back into the swing of making YouTube videos. I will not take another 4-month break or however long it's been. I pinky promise. And if you want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can find me Instagram, Twitter. We do a lot of fun stuff over on Twitch. That's where I am most often if I'm not here. And you can check out my store, the link in the bio, if you want to see all these products that I'm talking about and check out my prices and compare them to yours. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.